It was a quiet autumn afternoon in Seattle when Emily's phone buzzed with a call from an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it, but something compelled her to answer. The voice on the other end was unmistakable, despite the years that had passed. "Emily, it's Claire," the voice said, a mix of formality and something unplaceable in her tone. Emily paused, steadying her voice. "Claire? What's going on?" Claire, Emily's estranged sister, wasted no time delivering the news. "Grandfather passed away," she said bluntly, her voice tinged with a hint of mockery. "I figured you should know. I'm sure you're busy with your simple life." The words stung, but Emily refused to let it show. "Thank you for letting me know," she replied, her tone even. "I'll make arrangements to come." The news alone was shocking, but Claire's words carried an undertone that hinted at an ulterior motive. Emily had cut ties with her sister years ago after a bitter betrayal. Claire had always been the golden child, charming their parents and stealing the spotlight. But the ultimate fracture came when Claire manipulated Emily's fiancé, Ethan, into ending their engagement and pursuing a relationship with her. Emily had moved on, or so she thought. She now lived in the suburbs with her husband, Michael, a kind and supportive tech consultant, and their bright 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily, with her love for art and her budding YouTube channel, was the light of their lives. But Claire's call dragged Emily back into memories she'd worked hard to bury. Returning to the family home for the funeral meant revisiting painful chapters of her life. It also meant facing Claire, whose calculated charm always masked her true intentions. Emily couldn't help but wonder if there was more to this sudden reconnection. The years of distance hadn't dulled the tension between them, and Claire's smirking tone hinted at more than grief. As she prepared for the trip, Emily steeled herself. The funeral wasn't just about saying goodbye to her grandfather. It was about confronting the unresolved issues that had shaped their family. Little did she know, this encounter would bring revelations that would change everything she thought she knew about her past. Emily stood outside the old family home, her heart pounding as memories of her childhood came rushing back. The house, with its worn charm and weathered walls, looked almost unchanged, yet it felt different, like a stranger she once knew intimately. She hadn't been here in over a decade, not since the rift with her sister Claire had torn the family apart. Now, she was back, drawn by the funeral of their grandfather, a man who had been both a source of wisdom and a mystery in their lives. The atmosphere inside the house was heavy with grief and nostalgia. Familiar faces, some sorrowful, others marked by veiled agendas, filled the room. Emily moved through the crowd, feeling the weight of old relationships hanging in the air. Then she saw her. Claire. Claire was surrounded by a small group, her laugh light and polished as though she wasn't standing in the shadow of their grandfather's death. Her immaculate appearance and confident demeanor hadn't changed. But Emily knew better. Beneath Claire's charm lay layers of manipulation and secrets. As if sensing Emily's gaze, Claire turned. A practiced smile spread across her face as she approached. "Emily," she said warmly, but the gleam in her eyes betrayed her. "It's been so long. You look well." Emily forced a polite smile. "It has been a while. How are you holding up?" "Oh, Claire said with a casual shrug, handling things as always. Grandfather was quite the figure, wasn't he? Always so, particular about his values." The comment stung. Grandfather had always been clear about integrity and fairness, qualities Claire seemed to dismiss as trivial. Before Emily could respond, Claire leaned in closer, her voice lowering. "There's something you should know. Grandfather's will. It's complicated." Emily's stomach nodded. "Complicated how?" Claire smirked, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Let's just say, you might want to brace yourself. It's not just about saying goodbye. There are decisions to be made." Emily's mind raced. She could sense Claire's words carried more weight than she was letting on. Grandfather had been a man of principle, but his choices had sometimes divided the family. The very idea that there was more to uncover felt overwhelming. As the day wore on, the whispers about the will grew louder. Relatives exchanged furtive glances, and Emily caught snippets of conversation about a trust fund tied to the family business, something that had long been a cornerstone of grandfather's legacy. The conditions of the inheritance seemed to reflect his values, rewarding honesty and resilience. Emily realized she was standing at the edge of not just a funeral, but a reckoning. The fractured family dynamics that had shaped her life were now coming full circle. This was not just a visit to pay respects. It was a return to the past that would force her to confront the truth about her family, her sister, and herself. The day of the funeral arrived with an overcast sky, casting a somber mood over the proceedings. Emily stood outside the church, clutching her coat against the crisp breeze. She took a deep breath, her gaze lingering on the heavy wooden doors that led to the service inside. Steeling herself, she stepped through, bracing for the onslaught of memories and emotions waiting within. The church was filled with mourners, their quiet whispers blending into the organ's low hum. Emily scanned the pews, recognizing familiar faces she hadn't seen in years. Her cousins, distant aunts and uncles, and even family friends who had been a part of her childhood. The air was thick with unspoken words, unresolved grievances, and the heavy weight of grandfather's absence. As Emily found a seat, her eyes landed on Claire, seated near the front. She was dressed impeccably, as always, her posture perfect, and her expression a mask of poised grief. Claire seemed to soak in the attention, nodding solemnly as people offered condolences. To Emily, her sister's demeanor felt calculated, as if she were performing for the crowd. The service began, and as the eulogies were delivered, Emily felt a bittersweet ache. Grandfather had been a complex man, stern yet kind, with a sharp sense of justice. He had often spoken of integrity and resilience, values he held above all else. Emily had admired him for those principles, though she often felt overshadowed by Claire and his eyes. After the service, the family gathered at the ancestral home for the wake. The house was alive with quiet conversations and the clinking of glasses, but for Emily, it felt haunted by echoes of the past. The laughter and arguments that had once filled its walls now lingered as faint memories, both comforting and painful. Claire was the center of attention, as usual, her charm on full display. She moved through the crowd effortlessly, sharing anecdotes about grandfather and graciously accepting compliments on her polished demeanor. Yet Emily noticed the calculated gleam in her sister's eyes. Claire was always in control, always spinning narratives to suit her purpose. Emily tried to blend into the background, but it wasn't long before Claire cornered her in a quiet corner of the living room. "Emily," she said, her tone warm but her eyes sharp. "It's so nice to see you back in the family home. Brings back memories, doesn't it?" Emily smiled faintly. "It does. Some better than others." Claire's lips twitched in what could barely be called a smile. "I wanted to talk to you about grandfather's will." Emily tensed. "What about it?" "Well," Claire began, her tone dripping with practiced nonchalance, "it's not straightforward. Grandfather always had a way of making things interesting. He tied the inheritance to some conditions." "What kind of conditions?" Emily asked, her voice steady despite the growing tension. Claire leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "It's tied to the family business. Whoever takes it over has to prove they can uphold his values. Honesty, integrity, resilience, all that stuff he used to preach about. Apparently, there's even a clause about keeping the family united." "Sound like anyone you know?" Emily stared at her sister, unsure whether to laugh or be angry. "Are you saying you think you're the obvious choice?" Claire shrugged, her smile widening. "I'm just saying I've always been the one who kept things together. Don't you think grandfather would see it that way?" Emily could feel the heat rising in her chest, but she refused to give Claire the satisfaction of a reaction. "If that's what you believe, Claire, then good luck." Before Claire could respond, an elderly relative approached, drawing her attention away. Emily took the opportunity to slip out to the back porch, needing a moment to clear her head. As she stood there, the cool air calming her, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a rivalry over an inheritance. It was a test, a final move by grandfather to force the fractured family to face its demons. Emily resolved then and there that she wouldn't let Claire's manipulations define the outcome. If she was going to confront the past, she would do it on her terms, with integrity and strength, the very values grandfather had always championed. The tension was palpable, and the stakes were high, but Emily knew one thing for certain. This funeral was just the beginning of a much larger reckoning. The week following the funeral was supposed to be a time of reflection, but instead, it spiraled into chaos. Emily had returned home, hoping to leave the weight of her family's tension behind, but Claire had other plans. The first sign of trouble came when Emily's phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. Claire's social media posts had started to stir the pot. Claire had always been adept at curating a flawless image online. Her Instagram feed was filled with pictures of glamorous events, expensive vacations, and perfectly posed snapshots that screamed perfection. But now, she was using her platform to take subtle jabs at Emily and twist the narrative about their grandfather's inheritance. One post in particular caught Emily's eye. A picture of Claire at the family home, captioned, "Carrying on the family legacy is no small task, but someone has to do it. #leadership, #family values." It didn't take long for Emily to realize the intent behind the post. Claire was positioning herself as the rightful heir to their grandfather's legacy, implying that Emily was unworthy of the inheritance or the family's respect. Emily tried to ignore it, but the comments on the post were harder to dismiss. Mutual acquaintances and distant relatives chimed in with supportive words for Claire, praising her dedication to the family. Some comments, however, were less subtle, asking pointed questions like, "Is your sister helping with any of this?" Or, "What's Emily's role in all of this?" Claire's next move was even more calculated. She shared a short video, reminiscing about childhood memories with their grandfather. The video, edited to perfection, painted her as the dutiful granddaughter who had always been by his side. Emily wasn't mentioned once. Emily's frustration boiled over when she saw a comment from one of their cousins. "It's clear who the real family leader is. Claire, you've always been the glue holding us together." Emily's husband, Michael, noticed her growing agitation. "You can't let her get to you," he said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "She's not just getting to me," Emily replied, scrolling through the comments. "She's rewriting the story. And people are believing her." That evening, as Emily and Michael discussed the situation, their 6-year-old daughter, Lily, joined them with her tablet in hand. "Mommy, people are saying mean things about you," she said, showing Emily the comment section of Claire's latest post. It was a turning point for Emily. She realized she couldn't let Claire's manipulations go unchecked, not just for her own sake, but for Lily, who looked up to her. Emily decided to respond, not through direct confrontation, but by using Lily's creativity and their own truth to counter Claire's narrative. Lily's YouTube channel, which showcased her artwork, had gained a modest following. Emily helped her create a heartfelt video titled, "What Family Means to Me." The video featured Lily's vibrant drawings, interwoven with candid moments of their family life, laughter during game nights, planting flowers in their backyard, and baking cookies together. It was genuine, heartfelt, and reflected the love and unity Emily's small family shared. At the end of the video, Lily spoke directly to the camera. "Family isn't about who looks the best or who talks the loudest. It's about being there for each other and being honest." The video struck a chord with viewers. Within days, it began to gain traction, with comments flooding in from people applauding the authenticity and warmth it portrayed. Many contrasted it with Claire's posts, which now seemed superficial and performative in comparison. The fallout for Claire was swift. People began to question her motives, and the discrepancies in her polished narrative started to unravel. Comments appeared on her posts, calling her out for exploiting the family's grief for attention. Some even pointed out that Emily's video showed the real essence of their grandfather's values: honesty, resilience, and togetherness. Claire, for the first time, seemed to falter. Her posts became less frequent, and when she did share something, the engagement was lukewarm at best. Emily didn't take pleasure in Claire's unraveling. For her, the victory wasn't about taking Claire down, it was about reclaiming her voice and showing Lily the importance of standing up for what's right. As the drama subsided, Emily felt a renewed sense of strength. Claire's online antics might have caused a stir, but in the end, It was Emily's quiet determination and authenticity that resonated with people. It was a lesson in the power of truth over appearance and the importance of staying true to one's values, no matter the opposition. In the weeks following the social media drama, the cracks in Isabella's carefully curated life began to show. Her polished image, the designer clothes, glamorous vacations, and constant admiration wasn't holding up under the weight of scrutiny. The backlash from Emily's heartfelt response had shifted public perception. For the first time, Isabella wasn't the shining star she had always portrayed herself to be, and the consequences were swift and unforgiving. At first, Isabella tried to salvage her reputation. She doubled down on her posts, sharing more pictures of her supposed achievements and lavish lifestyle. But the comments section told a different story. People started questioning the authenticity of her content. Observant followers noticed inconsistencies in her posts. Locations didn't match up, events seemed fabricated, and the narrative she was pushing felt hollow. What once inspired envy now drew skepticism. Behind the scenes, Isabella's personal life was unraveling even faster. Her relationship with her ex-husband, Ethan, had already been strained since their divorce. However, the recent attention on their family, fueled by the inheritance drama and social media exposure, brought new complications. Ethan, who had managed to remain out of the limelight, found himself dragged into the narrative. His frustration boiled over when Isabella attempted to use their son, Lucas, as a prop to regain sympathy online. Their fragile co-parenting arrangement crumbled, and Ethan filed for full custody of Lucas, citing Isabella's unstable behavior and manipulation as detrimental to their son's well-being. This legal battle not only put additional strain on Isabella, but also brought her under the harsh gaze of the court, where her fabricated life began to unravel further. The judge ordered a deeper investigation into Isabella's financials and personal conduct, exposing more truths she had worked so hard to bury. Financially, Isabella's situation was equally precarious. Her luxurious lifestyle, which she had flaunted so publicly, was funded by loans and credit she could no longer sustain. As her debts mounted, she was forced to sell off her prized possessions, her car, expensive jewelry, and eventually, her penthouse apartment. The move to a modest rental home in the outskirts of Los Angeles was a stark contrast to the image she had built over the years. Amid this chaos, the final blow came from within the family. During a heated discussion about the inheritance, Emily, who had grown stronger through her own challenges, confronted Isabella in front of their relatives. She laid bare the truth about their grandfather's legacy and values, pointing out how Isabella's manipulations had consistently gone against everything he stood for. For the first time, Isabella had no rebuttal. Her charm and excuses faltered under the weight of undeniable facts. Their parents, who had long turned a blind eye to Isabella's behavior, couldn't ignore the consequences any longer. Their mother, once a quiet bystander, finally spoke up, acknowledging the mistakes made in enabling Isabella's actions. "We let this go on for too long," she said, tears in her eyes. "It's time we face the truth, even if it hurts." Isabella, stripped of her usual defenses, was left to confront the reality she had created. For years, she had built a house of cards, relying on manipulation and deceit to maintain her status. But now, the cards had fallen, leaving her exposed. The fall from grace was a painful wake-up call. Isabella withdrew from social media entirely, disappearing from the public eye. She reached out to Emily, not with her usual charm or pretense, but with something resembling genuine remorse. "I don't know where to start," she admitted in a trembling voice. "I've lost everything." Emily, though cautious, recognized the sincerity in her sister's words. She wasn't quick to forgive, but she offered Isabella something small, a chance to rebuild, not as rivals, but as siblings. "You can't undo the past, Claire," Emily said, her voice firm yet kind. "But you can decide what you do next. That's up to you." Isabella's downfall wasn't just about losing her material possessions or public image. It was about losing the identity she had clung to for so long. In its place, she faced the difficult task of rebuilding herself, this time with honesty and humility. The The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, Isabella had no choice but to confront the consequences of her actions and take steps toward genuine change. For Emily, witnessing Isabella's collapse was bittersweet. It wasn't about revenge, it was about resolution. The rivalry that had defined so much of their relationship had finally reached its breaking point, and Emily felt a sense of closure. She had found her own strength and reclaimed her life, while Isabella had to face the hard truths of her own making. As their family moved forward, fractured but healing, Emily focused on the things that mattered most: her husband, her daughter, and the values that her grandfather had instilled in her. Isabella's downfall marked the end of an era, but for Emily, it was also the beginning of something new, a life unburdened by the past. Months after the chaos surrounding their grandfather's funeral, the family was slowly finding its footing again. The dust had settled from the battles over inheritance, the social media drama, and Isabella's public downfall. Emily had returned to her peaceful life with her husband Michael and daughter Lily, but something still felt incomplete. The fractured relationships within the family lingered, unresolved. It was on a crisp spring morning when Emily received an unexpected call from her mother. "We need to talk," her mother said, her voice heavy with emotion. "I've been thinking about everything, how we let things spiral out of control. It's time we come together as a family." Emily hesitated. The wounds from years of favoritism, betrayal, and misunderstanding still felt raw. But she also knew that avoiding the past would only let it fester. Reluctantly, she agreed to attend a family meeting at their grandfather's old house, a place filled with both painful and cherished memories. The meeting was tense at first. Isabella arrived looking subdued, a stark contrast to her former glamorous self. Gone were the designer clothes and confident demeanor. Instead, she carried herself with quiet humility. Their mother, who had always been a passive observer, took the lead this time. "I've made mistakes," she began, her voice trembling. "I should have seen what was happening and stepped in sooner. I favored one child over the other, and it was wrong. I'm sorry, Emily. I'm sorry, Isabella." The words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity. Emily felt her throat tighten but stayed quiet, letting her mother continue. "This family has been torn apart by competition and misunderstandings. But I believe we can start fresh if we're willing to try." Isabella was the next to speak. She looked directly at Emily, her voice soft but steady. "I've done terrible things to you, Emily. I let my insecurities and jealousy drive me to hurt you in ways I can't take back. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to change. I want to be better." Emily listened, her emotions a mix of anger, sadness, and cautious hope. It wasn't easy to trust Isabella's words after years of manipulation, but for the first time, her sister's remorse felt genuine. "We can't undo the past," Emily said finally, her voice steady. "But if we want to move forward, it has to be real. No more lies. No more games." The family spent hours talking, sharing grievances, regrets, and hopes for the future. The meeting wasn't a magic fix, but it was a step forward, a chance to rebuild. For Emily, it meant acknowledging her pain while choosing to let go of the bitterness that had weighed her down for so long. For Isabella, it was a chance to take responsibility and begin her path toward redemption. As the day ended, Emily watched Lily play in the garden, her laughter echoing through the air. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of peace. The road ahead would be long, but the family was finally on it together. In the months following her grandfather's funeral and the emotional reckoning it brought, Samantha found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. The rivalries, betrayals, and fractured family relationships that once defined her life no longer held the same weight. Instead, Samantha focused on her own growth, a path marked by resilience, self-discovery, and strength. For years, Samantha had lived in the shadow of her sister, Claire. Growing up, Claire's charm and ability to manipulate situations always seemed to eclipse Samantha's quiet determination and integrity. Their father's favoritism, coupled with Claire's relentless drive to outshine everyone, left Samantha feeling unseen and undervalued. But those feelings had pushed her to carve out her own identity, one built on hard work and honesty. After Claire's betrayal, stealing Samantha's fiancé, Ethan, Samantha had walked away from her family's toxic dynamics. It was a painful choice, but one that allowed her to rebuild her life on her terms. She met Michael, a man who loved her for who she was, and together they created a warm and loving home for their daughter, Lily. Samantha found solace in the simplicity of their life, away from the drama and competition that had once consumed her. When the family was pulled back together for her grandfather's funeral, Samantha knew she couldn't avoid the unresolved pain forever. Facing Claire again, especially after years of estrangement, had felt like reopening an old wound. Yet, as events unfolded, Samantha discovered a strength within herself that she hadn't fully recognized before. She no longer saw herself as the underdog in her own story. Instead, she embraced the values her grandfather had instilled in her: honesty, resilience, and the courage to stand up for what was right. One of Samantha's biggest moments of growth came when she decided to address Claire's manipulations, not with bitterness, but with authenticity. The video she created with Lily, showcasing their family's love and values, wasn't just a response to Claire's social media antics, it was a statement of who Samantha had become. It was proof that she didn't need to tear others down to elevate herself. Her strength lay in her integrity and her ability to move forward without succumbing to negativity. As Claire's life unraveled and the family dynamics began to shift, Samantha found herself in a position of leadership. Her relatives, once dismissive of her, now looked to her as a steady presence. Samantha used this opportunity to foster reconciliation, but on her terms. She wasn't interested in returning to old patterns. Instead, she focused on creating a new foundation for her relationships, built on mutual respect and honesty. Samantha's growth wasn't just about overcoming her family's dysfunction, it was about recognizing her worth and embracing the life she had built. With Michael and Lily by her side, she felt stronger than ever. The trials she had faced had shaped her, but they didn't define her. Instead, they became the stepping stones to a future where she could thrive, not despite her past, but because of how she had risen above it. Months after the family's tumultuous reunion, Samantha stood on the threshold of a new beginning. The storm of betrayal, rivalry, and past wounds had finally subsided, leaving space for reflection and growth. While the scars of her family's fractured dynamics remained, Samantha felt stronger than ever, ready to embrace the life she had built with her husband Michael and their vibrant daughter Lily. The lessons learned from her grandfather's funeral had been profound. Confronting Claire's manipulations, reconciling with her parents, and rediscovering her own strength had given Samantha a new perspective. She no longer carried the weight of resentment. Instead, she focused on what truly mattered: the love and stability of her family and the values of honesty and resilience that her grandfather had taught her. With this clarity, Samantha took steps to turn her experiences into something meaningful. Inspired by the challenges she had overcome, she started a community project aimed at helping families navigate conflicts and rebuild relationships. It was a tribute to her grandfather's legacy, a way to honor his values while making a tangible difference in the lives of others. Through workshops and support groups, Samantha offered tools for healing and reconciliation, lessons she had learned firsthand. Meanwhile, her relationship with Claire, though still tentative, was beginning to mend. Claire had stepped away from her fabricated social media persona and started to rebuild her life with honesty. While the road to trust was long, Samantha saw glimpses of sincerity in her sister's efforts. For the first time in years, their conversations were free of pretense, and though their bond was far from perfect, it was no longer defined by competition. At home, Samantha cherished the small moments, baking cookies with Lily, laughing with Michael over shared memories, and planning new adventures as a family. These were the things that grounded her, the proof that she had created a life of joy and authenticity despite the challenges she had faced. As Samantha looked out at the garden where Lily played, her laughter echoing in the warm afternoon air, she felt a profound sense of peace. The past had shaped her, but it no longer controlled her. She was ready for this new chapter, one filled with love, purpose, and hope for the future. It wasn't about erasing the past, it was about using it to build a brighter tomorrow.